Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Age of Mythology Retold, the public update preview for October. So we're gonna get some public testing until September 30th at 5 p.m. with a bunch of changes, and then we're going to get a full release. What is important to note here is that we may update the build with additional fixes. That is what Microsoft and World's Edge are saying. Also, Forgotten Empires, shouldn't forget about them. So over here, bunch of fixes, stability, performance, various bug fixes. Over here, UI changes, UI bug fixes, all of these kind of things. And fix about causing changes made by players in the editor to interfere with the ability to participate in multiplayer. Okay, fair enough. Hotkeys, graphics, fixes, all that. Controller changes to improve the usability for people playing on Xbox, because people do have issues controlling the game using gamepad. So it's nice to see them putting in that effort. My perspective on this, as long as it's not detracting from the complexity of the game, the overall experience, I don't care if it's on console or not. In fact, some of my favorite strategy games have been on console or were to some extent designed for it. Like Battle for Middle-earth 1, clearly they were already toying with the idea of making it work for console, though they only did that with Battle for Middle-earth 2. Though in that particular case, I would say there were certain issues from that particular transition, but clearly a lot of that effort was put in Battle for Middle-earth 1. So gameplay fixes as well, various bug fixes right here. So huntables that die from dot damage such as poison no longer lose all resources. Okay, all well and good. I imagine people are abusing that. The rock can now land on empty farms. I wish that they would improve the rock functionality, because it's kind of annoying to get it to land. It's annoying to get load units, getting units out. The value of the rock is to land a quick raiding force behind enemy lines so that you can, hurt them quite badly with that. At least that's the way I personally see it. Carnivore arms are no longer selected with the select myth unit hotkeys. That's a bit of a weird one. Didn't notice it. Regent is no longer considered a military unit and now has hero scaling per age, okay? And then we get a bunch of campaign hot fixes, visual polish for the most part, though a couple of balance changes. So Mission 4, the assault on Troy's gates. Mission 6, the fall of Troy, if I'm not mistaken on that. Pretty sure Mission 1 is Omens, Mission 2 is Consequences, Mission 3 is landing on Troy's shore, so Mission 4 is with Odysseus dealing with the Trojan Gate. May very well be something I'm interested in checking out. Interesting to note that they did change a couple more missions, quite a few more missions, so they still keep polishing up the campaign. I'm kind of wondering why they didn't do this at launch, before the game launch, but what do I know, right? It would be nice to have an option that added the original voice acting. I mean, there's a mod, sure, but it's kind of annoying, if you're going to play some campaign, then you're going to play some multiplayer, you obviously have to turn the mod off, right? Or at least I do. I don't know if you actually have to turn that mod off. It's just like I do it. Just don't want to have any particular issues with that. You never know. So various balance changes. One notable one over here is actually with the final mission of the Fall of the Trident campaign. Balance changes to the Norse allies base. So I'm kind of curious in checking this out, seeing how it is, because the Norse base, kind of useless. The reason they're kind of useless, I wish that the allies in that mission were actually more useful, as opposed to just window dressing. Yes, they give you those free units, and they, soak up some attacks. That's useful. I don't deny that, but I wish that they would do more, get heavy units at the very least with full upgrades as opposed to medium units, but we'll see how all of that does play out. Then various balance changes over here. Quite crucially, Champion Cavalry research time increased from 20 to 40 seconds. I don't know how many games are, are taking place in such a way that they're decided by this, but clearly that they feel it should take longer with this. I mean, there are obviously some 1v1 games, and especially team games. Now, Champion Cavalry is a significant amount of power, but it's also very, very expensive to get. Keep that in mind. The cost is already great. Like, going to H4 and getting Champion Cavalry, you can do it, but it's going to be tricky to just instantly get to H4 and instantly have all those resources unless there's nothing going on around the map over there. So just keep that in mind. And maybe that's a concern. Maybe they're looking at sets of data from people that are playing very passively. Or, like I've played games. I've seen people online. Like I've played 1v1 games myself, let alone team games, where I see people just sitting on their ass for a long time and just waiting to build up those upgrades. It's a bit weird. Whereas, in competitive play, competitive rank play, it's like very aggressive, very rush focused. Speaking about rushing, Achilles and Atalanta have had their movement speed reduced. I'd say this is more substantial for Atalanta than it is for Achilles. The reason it's substantial, like Achilles being a raiding hero, okay, fair enough, right? So his potential with respect to that has been reduced slightly, 0.2. Just keep that in mind. It's not a night and day difference. But Atalanta, and they mistyped her name over here, just pointing it out. But Atalanta, having her movement speed reduced from 5.7 to 5.6, that is more substantial. You might say, it's just 0.15, right? But here's the thing. Atalanta was already a bit slower than Cavalry, but she was able to keep up with them, which is important because one of the significant benefits of Poseidon's playstyle is raiding with Cavalry. That has been nerfed in more ways than one. I mean, you still have your Hypeus, they still have regenerating HP. They didn't touch that, because if they touched it for Poseidon, they would have to touch their precious Odin. If I detect, like, Odin's been in an overpowered state for a while, and I suspect the developers are fine with the raiding Cavalry playstyle, it is a bit annoying. I mean, okay, raiding Cavalry. Keep in mind, you already have healing if you're going to play Odin like that. Valkyries, because you want to go Valkyries if you're going to do that. But no, they have inherent regeneration of HP. And so does Poseidon for Cavalry if you get an upgrade. Odin has it by default. Seems that they don't want to touch that just yet. Now, to be certain, though, I gotta mention this. They might feel that Odin's situation in the multiplayer meta is okay. The reason I say this is if you look at the online statistics for Odin, yes, he has over 50%, but it's like 51, 52% win rate across all ELO rankings for the most part. That is not a bad place for a civilization for a major god to be in. If that would be the case for a lot of major gods, if you're very close to 50% as is, then maybe that's not the problem to focus on, as annoying as that is. Poseidon, however, is an annoyance because he has like 60% in certain matchups. I mean, yeah, Odin and Loki are really powerful against Gaia. That might have to do with Gaia's issues. That's why they buffed her recently, though maybe not enough. The problem is the early game situation. But very substantially over here in terms of units. So Toxotes shoot slower, 0.1 attack speed, basically. Age 4 units, with the exception of the Norse, have gotten a buff. So we're talking about Turtles, Carcinos for the Greeks, Atlantean myth unit. Just the Norse one hasn't been buffed. Gotten a slight nerf, but the other ones have been buffed. Not really going to focus on that, just buff across board with the exception of the Norse with regards to that. Probably because the Norse one was too powerful. Very substantial aspect though, Centaur special attack has had its damage reduced from 28 to 21. So all the damage that it's doing in that area, it's now reduced by 7. That's pretty substantial. More importantly than that, Spirited Charge movement speed increase for Centaurs has been reduced for them, not Hypeus, from 10% to 5%. So they are nerfing Poseidon. They might not be nerfing what they need to, but they probably figure, well, Poseidon is in a too strong state, but Odin, who has similar bonuses, he's not necessarily too strong, so let's not touch the regeneration of HP just yet. Let's nerf other things with Poseidon. At least that would be my suspicion on the subject. For Egyptians, again, like myth unit, naval myth unit buff over there, and a minion change. Now, I wonder how much this is with respect to ancestors or it's with respect to mummies. I think the ancestors' god power is fine. Mummies are a bit too strong, though. In some ways, like for their cost and the power they have, especially when you're considering in the fact, like in an Age 4 game, having a myth unit that can give as much as a mummy does, like, it's pretty crazy. Like, mummies are really, really good units. Especially when you combine that with the freaking Son of Osiris. Don't underestimate that combo. So it might be aiming, because it's the same unit for the mummy minion as it is for the ancestor's god power. Though it's kind of hilarious for me because someone mentioned this like a week ago or something along those lines in a comment. Like, we see this win rates, we see the domination of Poseidon, Odin, Loki, all that. Even Freyr is actually starting to do better and better in multiplayer, which is interesting. We see that though, and people are complaining on Reddit about the ancestor god power. Just thought I'd mention it. I don't know, like, I haven't seen it on Reddit. With regards to Age of Mythology. But yeah, if they nerfed it because people are complaining about it over there, it's like, we know what the statistics are. It would be nice to dive in deeper on the statistics, like which minor gods are people using, which kind of playstyles, all that, on that subject. Then Valley of Kings has been nerfed, so Pharaoh Empowerment training rate has been reduced, resulting in units being trained slower, while empowered after the upgrade has been researched. Now it gives less free units, and the training rate is going to be reduced. So they're slowing down the recruitment with empowering, you get less free units. I mean, it is a powerful upgrade, to be sure. It was much more powerful before the patch. Just gonna mention that in some ways. Like, it basically meant that you were instantly constructing more elephants. And sure, resources were an issue, but now you can get some free units. You know, I think the previous version was better. It was the equivalent of human units what Hell has for myth units. Okay. Locust Worm for Sobek, divine damage increased from 0.3 to 0.4. And Meteor has been nerfed. I mean, I understand why. You know, Thought is ridiculously strong. Though I think the problem with Meteor has always been the problem is, like, it could do a lot of damage, but it was so randomized. It's still very randomized how that damage is going to be. They do want to avoid clearly a situation where, you know, people just like win the game by destroying an enemy town center or a significant portion of the base with it. Maybe they should have focused on other things as well. But still. For the Norse, nothing. They're like, yeah, you know. I mean, they didn't nerf, for what it's worth. They didn't nerf Loki. They didn't nerf Odin slightly in the previous patch, so maybe they want to see how that all that plays out. But as it is, they just nerfed the Myth Age naval unit by reducing its damage versus Myth units by just a bit, a tiny amount. They removed the friendly fire for Freyr's Boar. They buffed the Atlantean Man of War, and they fixed the tooltip bug for Poseidon's Secret. Seems there's a lot of those. And then, just the final thing to mention, it's like, yeah, Norse town centers are now going to be the same as other town centers in the game. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. I do think that they do need to make bigger changes, and not just these small changes like, oh, where we attack on one unit or another. Maybe something like that will happen with respect to, like, don't get me wrong, I'm fine if, like, you know, because small changes will add up, and I am very happy with the constant updates that we are getting for the game, because we've gotten several updates already. I just kind of wish they were more substantial, if you will. But, you know, that does depend. What do you prefer? Like, do you prefer having smaller and smaller updates, you know, or not smaller and smaller, small updates, but they're coming in constantly? Or do you prefer seeing one big update, you know, that contains a lot of things? What do you think is better? There's pros and cons with both approaches, to be certain, from my perspective. I feel like for the campaign stuff, I would prefer a bigger update, even if I have to wait a bit longer for that. But that's just me, I think both approaches are fine with respect to it, because it would feel more impactful. Because am I going to replay all these campaign missions just because they tweaked a couple of units, some visuals? Probably not, right? Would I play them if they did a lot of things and the balancing, placement, visuals? Yeah, I would. And I think that's my perspective. In multiplayer, it's a different situation because smaller things do end up adding up if they're constant. If they're constant, you show you care, and if we're getting an update every couple of weeks, then the frustration I feel with the current meta, can go away. Costin signing out. Stay tuned for more.